it's quite another to make it happen. That's from page 184 of Mike Bechtle's People Can Drive You Crazy If You Don't Give Them the Keys. And to me, this is really the core of this book. Because one thing is to read the book, another is to actually take just one principle from that book and apply it in your life to actually practice that principle. And when you do that, it's kind of like you're living life to the fullest. You're not escaping from the social interaction with others by hiding yourself in a book, hiding yourself behind a cover, hiding yourself behind a face on a page somewhere. You're being real. Just one principle. And I really resonate with this one principle that Mike Bechtle is talking about in his book. And that is that I kind of compare it to there's two circles or two spheres. There's a little sphere in the middle, and then there's a bigger sphere around it. And within those two spheres there's a space. And that's where alignment is. The alignment between the inner sphere, which is who you are when you're by yourself, and then on the outside of the outer sphere is who you appear to be to your surroundings, to the outside world. And Mike Bechtle, he talks about that without alignment between the two, there's a tension. And he talks about the keys, as you can see, page 95. But really, on page 118, how to keep positive perspective in the tough situations. In other words, when we are in a social context with actual human-to-human interaction, not just online, doing social media stuff, which is great for companies and stuff. But still, how do we keep positive perspective in the tough situation? And that is when you're out there in real life, human-to-human interaction. And some of your stuff is triggered. How do you handle that? Because you don't want to display your stuff to the outside world. I mean, that's not real alignment. That's like being crazy. So, you need to, on page 118, become a connoisseur of truth, which to me is universal principle. And he has about 6 points here on page 118. The second one is surround yourself with people who build positively into your life. Choose your inputs carefully. set appropriate physical and emotional boundaries for the crazy people. Don't try to fix everyone else. Don't sweat the wrong stuff. So the problem isn't with the people that Mike Bechtle is seeing. It's with his lens. I just went up on page 118. That kind of didn't work, but anyway, let me just read it because I put a note there, it's supposed to be important. The problem isn't with the people I'm seeing in the social context we're out there. So it's not the people out there on the outside of my sphere. It's with my lens. Our tendency is to look through our upside down lenses and assume that what we see is reality. And what he means by upside down lenses is if you think the problem is outside yourself, your lens is upside down. The lens which you use to perceive reality or everyday life is upside down. So what he calls the lens is what I call the middle sphere. It's upside down, but in truth, a sphere cannot be upside down, really. It's zero gravity kind of thing, but according to Mike Bechtle, our tendency is to look through our upside down lenses and assume that what we see is reality. So we need to turn it around. Like if you want to learn something from a book, you have to be less than. You have to know that there's something in this book that I don't know, and you put yourself in a position of being less than. That's the only way you can learn. And he continues on page 118. In my quest to see things in closer detail, I sacrifice the broader perspective that shows me what is real. So, to make it simple, you basically practice, you find one principle in any book, any self-help book, or any, you don't even have to read a book, just maybe you discovered a universal principle on your own. You take that principle, be it the golden rule, be it fill in the blank. But you take that principle and you practice it. That's when things start to shift in your life. That's when things start to change for the better, if it's a universal principle. On page 113, Mike Bechtle writes, I watched a movie once where one man stabbed another, then ran away. The wound was serious, but not life-threatening if the victim could receive medical attention. But that injured person was so angry with the attacker that he began chasing him. Block after block he ran, trying to catch up with the man and take revenge. Because of blood loss, he grew weaker and weaker until his run turned into a walk, then a crawl, and finally he died on the sidewalk. So that's an example of you thinking that the problem influences are outside of you and not changing your own belief system. And it's also a universal principle. Principle being revenge is not a blessing. In other words, the principle of the opposite of revenge, which is forgiveness. If we practice that, then things would turn out for the better. Then the guy would have survived. So, are you stuck in a crazy world? You know, he has this great analogy on as he likens our emotions to an elephant, and then our logical mind as the driver or rider of the elephant, the director of the elephant. It's very interesting. Again, I think really the core of the book is the lens. It's going back to the analogy of the two spheres within each other. On page 49, imagine there's two people next to each other. There are two lenses next to each other. Two spheres within spheres next to each other. On the inside, that's how we are on the inside. On the outside, that's how we appear to others on the outside. That space between the two spheres, that's where the alignment happens. That's where life is interesting. That's where we work on ourselves to get to the universal principle before we make a statement on the outside. So on page 49, the solution is to look through each other's lenses. I need to realize that your perspective is different than mine, and try to understand, just try to understand how you see things. That doesn't mean I have to agree with you. It just means I want to see what you see. If we each take the time to understand where the other is coming from, we lay a foundation for an effective relationship. And then it goes on, becomes interesting when you have three lenses together, or using the analogy of the spheres within spheres, you have three spheres within spheres. On the inside, who you are when you're alone. On the outside, how you appear to others. The alignment happening between the two spheres. And then when you have three spheres coming together, what happens? On page 49, is even worse when there's a third person involved. If I talk to someone about you behind your back, I'm adding their perspective to my own, reinforcing my assumptions about your motives. But out talking to you and trying to understand you, your view, we move even further away from realistic connection. So what is a realistic connection? Realistic connection on page 180. I've had my doctorate for 20 years, I continued. In those 20 years, I've been asked many times where I I probably had a high B average, but I got the exact same degree as classmates who got straight A's. The goal was the degree and the gaining of knowledge. I was able to accomplish that goal without the pressure of striving for perfection. So here, connecting the realistic connection and the striving for perfection through these pages from 49 to 180. The amazing journey of realization is that perfection is ultimately unattainable, and that realistic connection happens when we are ourselves, we're allowed to be ourselves. Without the fear of judgment of others, we just allow that alignment between the inner sphere and the outer sphere to take place. And when we can do that with ease and grace and allow opinions of others. On page 203, we have a choice. In other words, we're not the victim of our own faulty belief systems or reactionary habitual behavior. On page 203, we have a choice. We can keep things the way they are, or we can start a journey to make things better. Maybe the other person changes. Maybe we change. Maybe both of us change. There's always hope if we make new choices. We don't have to be victims. People can't drive us crazy if we don't give them the keys. And that's about it, folks. Can you change someone else?